at it. Beautiful, perfect, elegant, powerful. You know what you need to do now? Put it away, because Artian is still better. Hello, my fellow great sword wielders, my fellow choosers of the best weapon, my fellow masters of overcompensating with huge numbers that we one day hope will grow large enough to fill the voids in our hearts. I hope you're enjoying Title Update 1, I certainly am, and in no small part because new monsters means new weapons, new armor, which means better ways to greatsword. Or at least that's what I would like to say. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some really cool, powerful things to talk about, otherwise I wouldn't be here to talk to you about them, but it might not be as straightforward as, oh, swap these armor pieces, these decorations, and cool, we have beat the previous best meta sets, and on we go, slashy slashy. It's not quite that simple. And, well, the why of that is what we're going to get into. First and foremost, Mizitsune does nothing for us. Zoh Shia, however, is a lot more interesting. The incredible efficiency of that helmet and especially chest is really quite tasty. Agitator is certainly up there and is now something that we can incorporate in a certain way. But look, I don't want to just keep beating around the bush, let's dive straight into it. With weapon choice. So, the ideal option, especially as Mizitsune, even tempered, still dies pretty quick, even though he does hit astronomically hard, hunt times haven't really gone crazy inflated in Title Update 1. Zoh Shia a notable exception, but even in that case, you're still best off all round having a sleep Artian greatsword, as that double damage hit once or twice a hunt is going to add on average more total damage than element over the course of the sort of 5 minutes or so you're going to be hunting for. And yes, even if that goes up to 10 minutes, that's kind of where it starts to break even, so you're still fine to go with the status. In any case, element is totally okay. The important thing is A, you use the element that the monster you're hunting is weakest to, but B, you have 225 attack on your Artian, achieved via 3 attack infusions and 4 attack reinforcement bonus rolls, with the 5th one being a sharpness boost, so you have the perfect amount of comfy sharpness where you don't lose DPS from having to sharpen too often. This is still, in 99% of situations, going to be your best greatsword to use in Wilds currently with your highest output. Now then, let's talk about Zoh Shia and Whiteflame Torrent. So at a baseline, the 220 raw and the 5% affinity isn't too far off your perfect Artian. In fact, if you only had 4 ideal rolls, so let's say 3 attack and a sharpness, and then like a useless element or status up, it's pretty damn near identical. Obviously, the only difference is you're swapping status or a different element for just dragon. Now, dragon's the best all-round element, but still, it's nothing crazy. That said, the sharpness of Zoh Shia is enough that you are comfortable without needing any help managing the sharpness, so that's nothing to worry about. So essentially, what is going on here? Well, the trade-off is losing 2 ranks of critical boost due to the slot difference in exchange for Whiteflame Torrent and -5 raw. Now, that -5 raw is already quite hefty, but hey, Whiteflame Torrent might be enough to more than make up for it and the 2 ranks of critical boost we lose, right? Because this is how you'd want to decorate them both up. Obviously, this critical 2 here should be a critical 3, I just don't have 2 of them, and then the rest is used to finish up your focus. So on your Artian 5 ranks, and on your Zoh Shia, you just get your 3 ranks. In any case then, well, how does Whiteflame Torrent play out for Greatsword? Now, we have a video up on the channel right now extensively testing this skill in all its parameters, everything it could do in every conceivable way for every weapon. So if you want some real in-depth look at it, well, that is there, and I will link it down below. But to keep it light, because this is of course a Great Sword build guide, not a Whiteflame, Torrent skill guide, it will proc once every 5 seconds or so for that standard 50 fixed damage. Now, this isn't too shabby. I've run some basic tests, essentially just going to 10,000 damage, which on average takes about 20 hits, doing our standard, if we're hitting a target dummy for most damage combo, and seeing what percentage of that damage dealt came from Whiteflame Torrent. How many times did it proc? Well, in the 2 run-throughs that I did, the results, as you can see, were thus. We got to 10,900 and 10,300 damage respectively, both took 28 hits, both took 63 seconds, and in both cases we got 7 procs for 350 damage, which meant that it was worth about 3.3% damage on average. So that's not too bad. However, 2 ranks of critical boost at the 90% average affinity that our sets have, the reality is a tiny bit lower, but it's a good number to use, that's worth about 5.4% damage. So already you can see that it is a little bit of a loss to swap 2 critical boost for Whiteflame Torrent, and that's without accounting for the -5 raw on the Zoh Shia Great Sword. So, on the surface, yeah, it is just kinda strictly worse than a perfect Artian. But that's the key word, isn't it? Perfect. And just for comparison, this was the same test done with the perfect Artian, ending up on higher average damage, or in some cases not even needing the same amount of hits to do the damage. And on the perfect Artian test, well, there's no dragon element to help with the damage, and the sleep hits were pretty much wasted too, as it's just target dummy solid damage, so it really does kind of hammer the point home. However, this is a very kind of in a vacuum unrealistic to actual hunting test. Of course it is. In a long enough time period, and again I will save you the in-depth as the why, but chiefly it's due to Whiteflame Torrent having a time-based cooldown as a component of its proc rate, meaning that even when you're not attacking the monster or you're being hit or you're running around, the next hit of 50 damage is essentially loading. You, over a long enough period of time, will get enough damage out of it that it will start to overtake that 2 critical boost, that it will start to overtake that 5 raw. But that takes a really long hunting horizon. Essentially, look at it this way: the slower your hunts, or the less efficient you are with your DPS, then the better Whiteflame Torrent gets, until eventually at the extreme end, it is actually worth using. But that extreme end is so extreme that I wouldn't insult any of you guys by suggesting you fall into that category. So what I will say is thus, for sort of easy TLDR. The Zoh Shia Great Sword is essentially equal to a 4 out of 5 perfect Artian. So 220 with a sharpness roll, or 225 without a sharpness roll. That's what it's kind of level with. And a 4 out of 5 Artian's still kind of annoying to grind for, it's still not that common. And then if we compare it to a perfect Artian over average hunt lefts, it's about 2 to 3%-ish worse than the perfect Artian, which in the grand scheme of things with the current state of the game is kind of nothing. Bottom line, it's by far and away the best non-Artian greatsword, and it's close enough to the kind of tippy top of Artian that if you're sick of staring at green metal and want to instead use this beautiful creation, then go for it, with my blessing, both personally and mathematically, that you're not throwing or doing too bad by doing so, and you're gonna have a great time. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. Now then, before we talk about what our new best set is, I need to talk about Maximum Might, because it's been stealth buffed in a huge way in Title Update 1, to the point it's affecting Great Sword more than any of the new armor and weapons. So how Max Might used to work is you would spend stamina, and then you would regen to full, and look, it didn't deactivate. That's because there's a 2-second grace window. You're allowed to spend 2 seconds not at full stamina before it deactivates. So if I deliberately spend 2 seconds not at full stamina, there we go. Then once you reach full stamina, another 2 seconds, and boom, it activates. That's all well and good. However, pre-Title Update 1, the 2 seconds of grace period when you spend stamina would be remembered. So let's say you spent a second without full stamina, then got back to full stamina, like a single roll there, it would go, okay, you've used 1 second of your 2-second grace window, so the next time you roll and spend a second without full stamina, we're gonna deactivate the skill. The timer didn't reset. And as you've probably noticed based on what just didn't happen, the timer now does reset. You can spend stamina over and over and over again, and it doesn't matter how often you do it, as long as you reach full stamina within 2 seconds, Maximum Might doesn't deactivate. Which is an absolutely huge deal, because the consistency of this skill is now through the roof. It used to be active for every true charge, and about 75% of the time outside of that. Now, it's up to like 90% activation consistency, and also essentially every true charge. Which means the value of 2-set Fulgur Anjanath to gain an extra little segment of stamina, because that little extra segment used to apply the same rules as now normal stamina has with Title Update 1. So we essentially gain Fulgur Anjanath 2-set permanently thanks to this change, is an easy way to look at it. Which obviously means you no longer need to build Fulgur Anjanath if you want Maximum Might consistency. Now, Fulgur Anjanath 2-set wasn't the best build anyway by pure effective raw maths, but it was very, very up there. In fact, it was essentially equal to the alternative, so it was a fair choice, just personal preference. Whereas now it's just kinda not needed, and we can get more and better skills. Sort of. So with that context in mind, let's get into this. With what is now just the definitive best greatsword set in Title Update 1, and it's the same as it was before Title Update 1. See, what has changed thanks to Maximum Might being buffed is that now it doesn't have competition in the Fulgur Anjanath option. So to kinda just completely skip ahead a little bit, I spent a long time and a good like 20-minute maths-filled video testing and exploring the relative strength of this option, and the TLDR of which was, with Fulgur 2-set, Maximum Might had a 90% uptime, so it was worth 27% affinity, and without it in this set that gets the extra 15 raw from 4-set gore, Maximum Might had a 75% uptime. But as we've just discussed, essentially, now Maximum Might treats your normal stamina bar like you have Fulgur 2-set, so now this set also has 90% Maximum Might uptime. And if we compare the EFR of the two sets, this is how it looked before title updates change, and as you can see, they were identical. They were so close, so it didn't really matter which one you favored. I, of course, always favored the one that, I came up with in Gore with the Udra helmet, because that one rank of resentment, even if you said it's only 0.5 raw, it pushes it over the line. But either way, you were fine. However, now, if we adjust the gore set for 90% maximum might uptime, which it now does thanks to the changes, it takes it to 472 EFR, which pushes it to just the clear winner when it comes to your mathematical average highest output greatsword set, which is really awesome. So technically we have had an improvement, and a couple of percent improvement at that, and it's come without having to change any of the armor we're using at all. So this then, as a reminder, is the set. 4 pieces of gore, except the helmet being new udra, and all beta. And that gives us the full Wex, Counter-Strike, Maximum Might, and Antivirus. It would be nice to get a single rank of burst in here for the extra 5 raw, and just to mention it while I'm on burst, 1 rank of burst is worth 5 raw. That's the plus raw you get from any hit. Yes, Greatsword can go higher if you activate the 5-hit bonus, but we very rarely ever can do that or keep it for long enough to do anything meaningful with it, so 1 rank of burst for Greatsword is worth 5 raw, which is why when it comes up in calculations, it's plus 5. That seems to catch people out sometimes. In any case, this is where we end up. You can make this 1 constitution, decoration, anything you like. If you eat for stamina food, then you certainly don't need it, as that gives you fake ranks of constitution, and that helps with maximum might uptime even more, but just for neatness, I've got it in. In any case, yeah, this is where it's at, and it's very, very nice. And then in your weapon, whichever one you use, a perfect Artian or Zoh Shia, just for the look and the fact it's so close. And then in your weapon, whichever you use, a perfect Artian or Zoh Shia, if you prefer the look, and because it's so close, you want focus filled, and then as much crit boost as you can get. This one obviously should be level 3, I just don't have 2 level 3 decorations. Now, this keeps coming up, so let me address it. If you want to, you can use offensive guard, and this is completely fine. 15% attack when you guard is really, really good, and we do perfect guard a lot on Greatsword. However, it lasts for 12 seconds, and the time it takes to get to a true charge after perfectly guarding and triggering it is about 10 seconds, which means to really get value out of this, you have to have the monster let you true charge it almost immediately after you guard it. And that will happen sometimes, but not always. Your actual uptime on this across a hunt is really low. So when it comes to 15% attack just some of the time, or 6% more crit damage 90% of the time just full stop, I favour the extra 2 ranks of crit boost. The reality is they're both very, very even in the DPS increase, and essentially if you're like getting towards speedrunner levels, that offensive guard window starts to matter more because you will always use it well, but us mere mortals, you're going to get on average more consistency out of just making all your crits, and we have high affinity do that extra 6% more damage with 2 ranks of crit boost. But no matter which you use, and honestly use whichever you prefer, you're going to be absolutely fine efficiency-wise. However, I don't just want to leave you with, yay, so best set was the old best set, it's just now better for reasons that aren't to do with skills, armor choices, or anything like that. So what I will do is show you your second option now for Greatsword, thanks to Title Update 1, that is actually very worth considering. And it looks a little something like this, using 2 pieces of Zoh Shia. And that gives us at a base your 3 Wex, 2 coming from the Talisman. Oh, and by the way, mantle-wise, Corrupted is still pretty much your averagely best mantle. The affinity nerf down to 10%, the attack getting cut like in half is obviously huge, but Evasion Mantle for Greatsword requires you to approach speedrunner's level of perfection play with it. You need to hit that timing like Offensive Guard with True Charge, and while you can make it work really well, for best sort of have average ease of use damage, Corrupted still will have your back. In any case, this at base then is your 3 Wex, 1 Agitator, 1 Counter-Strike, a bit of antivirus, and hell, even elemental absorption. Once we decorate it up, we end up finishing our weakness exploit, we finish Counter-Strike, we get full maximum might, finish antivirus, get 2 agitator, and still that's 1 burst, and again, elemental absorption, whatever. This is really nice, and the reason it's really nice is it lets us have Zoh Shia's Pulse, Super Recovery Level 1. Which means our health will just permanently tick up forever passively. Which is really nice because we take a lot of chip damage from shoulder tackles and the like. So in terms of just pure comfort of a set, this is really excellent and feels really smooth and fun to play. And is something I would definitely recommend if you're not bothered about, you know, super min-max efficient. Because honestly, it's not that big of a loss. This then is the EFR. And as you can see, it's only 4 less effective raw than the Gore 4 set, which is about 1% weaker. So you lose 1% damage, but gain that permanent healing, which is comfy and fun. So it's really not that big of a deal for quite a neat upside. And it's something I definitely consider using myself, just because I enjoy playing with it. And oh my god, I can't wait to do the Immortal build. In any case, this is something to consider, and certainly something I wanted to show you guys, and I think it is a strong option. So essentially, make your choice. You can use this set for a little bit of healing, or you can use the Gore 4 set for a little bit more damage, you can use a perfect Artian for a little bit more damage on most hunts, or you can use the Zoh Shia Great Sword for a little bit less damage on most hunts, but still so close that the gain of looking incredible might well be worth it to you. And that's not a bad position to be in for a title update. Now then, before I let you go frolic back into the world of Title Update 1, listen to some diva, murder some Mizutsune, I do want to address one thing: speedrunning. I get a small minority of people that go watch like a Great Sword speedrun, see various skills and stuff being used, come back here and go, well, you're not using that, the speedrunners do and they're the best. They are the best. But that's kind of the point. What is good for a speedrun isn't necessarily always going to be the same as what's good for a normal hunter hunting normally, which, let's be honest, is 99% of us, and who I do these builds for. A speedrunner is going to use things like sneak attack, because the hunt's so short that it's up for like 40% of it, and that's a huge damage increase. They're going to favor agitator because in a speed run it's not a 50% uptime but like an 80-90% uptime, which makes it a more valuable skill. They're going to use the offensive guard because they can make it work perfectly, but that's not realistic nor the statistical average in practice for, again, a normal hunter hunting normally. The big outlier of this that comes up constantly is Jin Bloody Dahaad. Binding counter 1. So this, after you do a power clash at the 2 set, gives you 25 raw. The 4 set gives you 50 raw, which is obviously ludicrous, and you can have a pretty strong set with the 2 and 4 set, all things considered. However, it does not last long. And over the course of, again, a normal hunt, it's going to come out worse than using a regular one of the 3 sets I've showed you, even though for the duration of the revolt being active, yeah, you're just an absolute DPS god. But in a speed run against something with a clash, the time that this is up is again like half the hunt. And when we're looking at half the hunt, suddenly it's magnificent. But I don't know about you guys, but we're not killing monsters in a minute and a half, and that has to be taken into consideration. So while, yes, this set bonus is incredible in speedrunning scenarios against specifically monsters that clash with that strategy in mind, it's not a skill for general use, which is why I'm not recommended Jin Dahaad sets. I hope that makes sense. And that then is that, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you have enjoyed this update for Great Sword, and I hope you're enjoying titling, well, the title update itself too. We will be back with more if things change, or for some reason Whiteflame with Scorcher ends up being even better than we realize, and, you know, it's unlikely, of course. We have that thorough test up, but either way, I'll keep you guys posted, so maybe check the pinned comment, or if anything huge happens, I'll of course update you in a proper video. For now though, like if you enjoyed this, subscribe and hit the bell for more, consider supporting the future of the channel on Patreon down below, and until we meet again, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.